Okay, all right. So I just want to take a moment first before we continue and just welcome everybody to this great city's digital networking or virtual networking event. We do this every 2 weeks, and we're really happy to have Ray MacDonald on the call today, and he's going to be speaking about your business's digital, which is really kind of one of those things that I quite love to discuss, is the digital future of business and where things are going, especially after we see how people can effectively work remotely during this COVID-19 shutdown. It's kind of nice that we're able to do this. So I just wanted to welcome everyone that's on the call to the networking, and we're just going to start off with Lori here as Lori continues to tell us about her business and what she's doing.
Forward. Got a long history in that, from commercial lending, started doing independent consulting back in the day when it was the manufacturing environment was quite robust. Switched to small business startups about 5 years ago, and still working on that now. So that's fun.
Exciting. Okay. All right, Adam.
Hi there, my name is Adam. I am a freelance web developer and mobile developer, web designer and mobile developer, and the founder of Adamant Industries. Name no longer pending. I think I nailed that down. Most of what I've been focusing on is hybrid development, so iOS and Android builds using things like React Native, or native development, focusing mostly with things like iOS. It's been a fun time, and I'm always learning and usually quite humbled by projects I take up, because it teaches me to be a lot less minor details / small details, and much more bigger picture. So it's been a very, very, very enlightening learning experience so far.
And Adam, I gotta say, I love that name. There was a band, I think, back in the 80s, 70s, and they called Adamant, right? Adamant. I loved it. Fantastic.
Adamant, yeah.
I'll gift you a Spotify on that.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, cool. All right, Victor, you're here. Introduce yourself and let us know what you do.
He says apologies for the lack of mic.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so Catherine.
But certainly he could type into the chat box just what he does and who he is.
Yeah, and if you'd like, you can also put in there your contact information as well. So if people want to reach out to you, they can. That would be fantastic. Catherine.
Hi, I'm Catherine from Life's Emergency Training. We are a on-site first aid CPR AED training company, and our niche is industrial commercial businesses. We specialize in helping their HR be compliant with WSIB.
Wonderful. Okay, Paul. You're on mute, Paul.
Hello. Hi, guys. I saw this as I'm a colleague or ex-colleague of Ray's, so I saw that he was doing this. I thought I'd join in. Hello, Ray. Hello, everybody. I worked with Ray at Oracle back in the day, and
Valda says hi as well, Paul.
Oh, hey, Valda. Beautiful lady. So right now, I've had a long career in tech, and right now I'm working for a U.S.-based company selling project management, work management solution, and it's been good.
I'm going to be talking about Monday.com, Paul, so you'll just have to mute yourself for a little bit there.
Well, maybe I have a hard stop at 9:30, so it may be after that. But, hey, if you want to try that to get your legs underneath you for project management, then if you want a good product, you can come to Workfront. How's that?
There you go.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
No problem.
Thank
I
you,
was
Paul.
going to ask Ivan how the heck Paul got a password to this meeting, but
Well, I sought him out. I thought that we could use a heckler for you, so thank you, Paul, for joining.
Yeah, no problem.
Fantastic. All right, Sherry.
Oh, I noticed that one of the challenges with Zoom is that there's no natural, let's go around the room and introduce ourselves.
I know. And people keep shifting. It's like, what?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sherry Lozier. I am a consultant, executive coach, and I work with medium-sized businesses and primarily around business development, team building, executive coaching and development, and leadership.
That's right. Yes, you are. Yes, sirree. I just like to hear, it just flows. I love it, Sherry. Fantastic work. All right, Teresa.
My name's Teresa. I work with my agency. I also work with Ivan. He's my husband. We build brands such as This Great City and a few other ones that we've been working on for a little while. But we do a lot of marketing, so anything website, social media, SEO, all that fun stuff.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce Ray MacDonald. I've listened to Ray speak a few times, and when he speaks on technology, it just gets me all kind of worked up. So I thought it would be a really great addition to our morning calls to have him join us today. So go ahead, Ray.
Okay, thanks, Ivan. So I normally talk lately about cybersecurity and big infrastructure stuff, so it'd actually be refreshing to, I was pleased when you asked me to talk to small and medium-sized business type issues in IT. So because of the nature of this call, I'm going to introduce myself just slightly different than I normally do. So I started high school in 1980 to date myself. Everybody's calculating things out there, but anyhow, in 1980, and 4 microcomputers showed up. Commodore PETs showed up. And so I never had to do punch cards like my older brothers did and other people. And, you didn't get to trip people as they're going down the hallway and watch their punch cards go all over the floor. And if they didn't number their punch cards, they were in big trouble, right? And that happened a lot. So in my case, I went kind of crazy because in that day, you turned the computer on and there was just this little blinking cursor and it didn't do anything till you told it to do something. So that intrigued me and I went kind of crazy. So I skipped most of my high school classes and I spent time in the computer lab, and luckily the computer professors liked me, so I got to work that way. In grade 13, which is where I usually start, I was writing a business plan for a computer consulting business, and the head librarian came along. It's a pretty large high school, it's about 1,700 students at Lauren Park in Mississauga here. So he came along and he said, "Can I see your plan?" So he took it away and he comes back and he puts it on the table and he puts his finger on it. He says, "I would go do this." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Both my brothers went to university. My parents expect me to go to university." He says, "No, I'd go do this. There's many ways to learn, Ray." And he took me to his office and he explained life and many different ways to learn. And he said, "I would go do this." He says, "None of the education is where the computers are at today, so you need to just go do this." And that's what I did. So I literally the next day got on the GO train, went downtown Toronto and registered my MacDonald consulting business. 10 years later, I became the chief architect for the IT group in Oracle Corporation and got to globalize IT. That's where Paul Sidwell and I know each other. He watched me grow up in the IT group just in Oracle Canada before I went off and did the global work. Launched Thin, that's what Ivan and I were talking about yesterday, launched Thin Network Computing, told Bill Gates we didn't need Windows anymore, we're just going to use browsers. In 1997 for Larry Ellison. So we had Colin Powell on stage at Radio City Music Hall, and we launched Oracle 8 and Thin Computing. And so that got it all going. The stake to kind of what's going on today is I was at Marsh McLennan Group of companies, and you're going to see me quote a few of their business insights. You guys maybe haven't seen them before, but they have Oliver Wyman, which is an excellent consulting company and management consulting. They have Lippincott Margulies, which is a branding company. And they put up a lot of free information on their insights in the industry. So hopefully I tie in a few of those for you today. And Ivan, I don't suppose you distributed the PowerPoint I threw at you? Oh, you're muted, but that's all right, Ivan. So I can share it or you can just distribute it to people, but it's got some links to some information I'm going to talk about shortly.
Yeah, I'll distribute it right after the presentation.
Okay, thanks. So 9/11 happened. So we lost 295 people and we lost the global data center. So it's just a complete shutdown of headquarters, including the loss of people, of which 24 people worked in my team. So that was a really big loss. But it was sort of similar in the sense no planes are going anywhere. Things are shut down for a number of weeks. We had a $50 billion company back and running in 3.5 days, which was quite a feat at the time. And you know, before that, I was supposed to do a lot of business continuity planning. So what happens if your business operations get impacted by a tragic event? And it was really hard to sell. It was really hard to sell CEOs on, hey, if something happens, you need to have these backup plans before 9/11. And then my job got a lot easier after 9/11, telling people, if your data center disappears, what are you going to do? We'll talk about that in relation to cloud services just before I'm done. I'm only going to talk for 10 minutes or so, but we'll talk a little bit about how to look after yourself and your company data, even for single business operations in a cloud services world. Okay, so that's my experience. The most recent ones was changing the world at Loblaw, and the fun part of Loblaw was I got to work with Joe Mimram for Joe Fresh, and I was on his committee how to grow Joe from $500 million company to a $1 billion company. And I got to open his flagship store on Fifth Avenue in New York and all those fun things. Those are great war stories for retail, I'll tell later, because Galen Weston wanted it opened immediately. And I kept saying, we don't have telco services to that office. So we had to go completely wireless. For the tech among us, I'll tell a quick joke. So we tested it out. I found a cool router to hook up the point of sale systems for the store, and it could take 3 different sticks. So I went out and bought 3 different Wi-Fi sticks for, using Verizon and AT&T and whoever the third one was. So I thought, I'm well covered. 3 different carriers. We got it all. We tested it. Everything's great. And then the day of, this was a big production in New York. So you had all the television crews and all kinds of news crews there. Nothing's working for the entire day. They're having to literally phone Visa transactions verbally in. And we don't know why. I had 3 different carriers. Nothing's working. Wasn't working the next day until all the television satellite trucks left from in front of the building. Then everything was working again. So, then I go back to telling Galen Weston to wait 2 more weeks until we had physical wiring to the facility. But no, we had to go ahead. We'll talk about 5G maybe for a minute before I'm done as well. So those were some fun experiences. And for the last 7 years, I was at TD Bank. I was known as a technology solutions executive. I looked after the MBNA Mastercard acquisition, the Visa Aeroplan acquisition, and then, of course, the last couple of years changing all the cybersecurity at the bank. Okay. Early in my career, I hung out in Radio Shack stores, and I managed Radio Shack stores, and I hired and fired salespeople. And so hopefully I can share a few things with you guys around where technology is going today, even for small businesses, despite my big corporate world stuff. So I don't know if anyone has seen this book from Thomas Siebel, Digital Transformation, and he calls it Survive and Thrive in an Era of Mass Extinction. So this just came out last year. It's an excellent book if you're into management consulting, if you're into strategic directions for companies. Now, in this book, he really covered the 4 basic areas that we talk about when we say your business has to be digital and you have to transform. And I thought I'd spend 10 minutes just talking to you guys about what that means to even small independent businesses. So he covers the main things, which you guys can imagine is cloud computing. That's the main thing. And I'm going to talk to you about cloud and safety or not of cloud. Make a few brief comments. Have me back another day if you want to talk about more deeply on a specific topic. But he talks about cloud. He talks about big data, which some people might say, what's big data got to do with me as an independent operator? But it has a lot. And hopefully I'll help you a little bit that way. He talks about Internet of Things. which you can no longer talk about without talking about edge computing. So if you're interested in the technology side of life, when it gets to architecture of big infrastructure, we actually talk far more about edge computing today than we talk about cloud. Cloud's like passé, edge computing is where everything's going. I'll talk about that. So Internet of Things with edge computing, and then of course he talked about artificial intelligence. And of course, there's two subcomponents of artificial intelligence I'll also talk to briefly, which is machine learning and deep learning. And we'll just briefly talk about why that's important to small businesses. So the only problem I have with this book, because I actually know Thomas Siebel from my Oracle days. So the problem with this book is he doesn't talk about networks. You can't talk about those four things without a fifth thing, which is networks. Networks are about to be very ubiquitous, not that they aren't today, but I mean ubiquitous from the sense I could be in my outhouse. Alvin and I were talking about this yesterday. I could be in my outhouse up north somewhere and still have the same network performance I'd have down here in a rural community or in a city, wherever I am. So we'll talk about 5G, but we'll also talk about that in relation to Elon Musk's satellites that he's putting up, which are called very low Earth orbit satellites. These things literally have to fly and readjust their orbit constantly because they're so low overhead. And yes, he's got over 200 of them. Actually, he's at about 300 already, heading towards tens of thousands of them. And his idea is the autonomous driving cars and people's access to full high definition movies and videos and everything will happen anywhere on the face of the planet, and he doesn't have to put in any infrastructure wiring. And he's already well underway. North America will be lit up, so to speak, as a service by the end of this year because he's using SpaceX to launch all these satellites. So I'm not talking great futures, folks. I'm talking really soon. And of course, the wireless carriers are all doing their 5G thing, which I'll talk about briefly in a minute. So I created a slide. Ivan, did you want to share it or did you want me to do that?
Okay. Can you? I don't actually have it up.
Oh, okay. Why did it disappear on me? Give me a second. Sorry, folks. So I wasn't going to do any presentation materials because I hate PowerPoints, but then I thought I need to leave you folks with a little something. So I threw together the quick thoughts as to what I wanted to cover for the next 5 minutes now. Where's my share button gone? Here we go. Too many windows open, sorry. It's great to get a very large monitor, but then you end up opening way too many windows and trying to find them all. Okay, here we go. And I'm sorry that it's a heavy textual slide. I'll send it to you guys anyways, but it's more talking points rather than a fancy graphic slide. And sorry, I always have to throw in my personal photography. That's makes Ivan cringe, but you know. Okay, do you folks see this now?
Yep.
Oh yeah, I see it.
Thanks, Ivan. Sorry, I overlapped my Zoom window, so I couldn't even see if anyone was nodding. All right, now I got you guys back. Okay, so I'm just going to I was started with a 4-quadrant slide, and I couldn't quite do it, so I split it out a little bit here. So drivers for digital business future. So when we say a business is going digital, we're talking 80–90% of the business industry must be digital, or it just won't survive, even so 3 to 5 years out from now. Even small little independent businesses. I'll use a quick example. My favorite restaurant in Oakville, Seasons, has stayed open through this time. It's a pain in the neck trying to get him on the phone, trying to get my order in. And then he's wondering why he doesn't get more orders. Well, it's a pain in the neck. Whereas another favorite of mine in Mississauga called Alioli's just reopened, but they went with Shopify and set up their whole storefront. So I don't need to wait to talk to them. I can wake up at 2 in the morning, or I'm usually still up at 2 in the morning, and I can decide what I'd like for lunch later that day, and I can do that order. I can also change it up until, you know, whatever their rules are. They usually have policy, so an hour before or 4 hours before, whatever it is. And I can change it. My lawn service company, I have extremely high allergies to grasses and trees, so I have to carry an EpiPen if I'm mowing my own lawn. So it was a great excuse to have to pay somebody to mow my lawn. Came home saying, "Oh, honey, sorry, the allergist says I have to carry an EpiPen now, so I might as well pay somebody to take care of the lawn." In doing that, getting a hold of these people by the phone, sometimes they won't call me back for 4 or 5 days. And I was thinking, how great would it be to have an app for my lawn care company that shows me what's been done and gives me future options and recommendations as to what should be done, and I just have to click them. So click, and click a date, even schedule it in, whatever it is. So how great would that be? So first of all, it's self-service. It's very important to push self-service onto the customers because they actually feel good about it, strangely enough. But also, I don't have to get burdened with it, and I can focus on the customer experience. So to get to my main points for today, I do want to talk about the customer experience, which is down in the lower left corner. So to finish up in the top, though, the drivers for digital business futures are remote everything for the next while. That's not going to go back to the way it was, by the way. So an awful lot of things are going to stay remote. So you can't be remote without being digital. Otherwise, I'm waiting to get through on a phone line, which is very inconvenient. So we want convenience. We want to be able to trust the interaction. Believe it or not, despite different breaches on digital services, people do think they're very trustworthy. We want, of course, everyone knows that, basic marketing. We want to cater to the desires of our customers. And we want to get as much automation in here as we can, which artificial intelligence also allows us to predict a lot of things of what people are going to prefer. So that helps us target our customers. So I've already covered these technology trends as far as just mentioning them. Cloud services. All I got to say to you folks, if you take nothing else away from today, than to use them. I'm going to talk about some specific ones at the very bottom, but use the cloud services. There is no point trying to do anything yourself. Either use low code. If you're doing custom stuff, use low code environments. We can talk about what that means another day. Internet of Things is changing the world fast. I think most of us know that that means sensors. So whether I have sensors all over my truck that are reporting wheel bearing conditions through temperature sensing, things like that, or whether it's in the engine compartment, which we're more used to already these days, whether it's reporting location, whether it's reporting how many left turns I take, because usually routing systems for transportation and trucking try to avoid left turns, even if it sends you a further distance to make all right turns to get to the destination, it will do that. Obviously, there's a calculation trade-off between how many left turns versus a further distance. But all those things get taken into consideration. Internet of Things is really big with my friends at Hitachi. You know, they even track where all the train cars are and things like that. So artificial intelligence, of which Toronto is the center of the universe right now for artificial intelligence. If you guys read my blog, you'll understand I keep saying if you haven't bought a condo in Toronto, it's still time to buy one before everybody's here. Although, you know, you got to wonder at Toronto losing the Google Smart City contract that was coming up. Should have done anything to keep that contract, by the way. But artificial intelligence had a huge breakthrough in the 90s, and we're seeing the difference. Basically, a professor at U of T, I'll leave out names. It takes me a long time to tell stories, so I'll leave out names. But professor at U of T was actually a psychologist by trade and a computer science by minors, I guess you could say that. He just dabbled in it like a hobby. And sort of in the 80s into the 90s, artificial intelligence went as far as it would ever go. It was just stuck. It wouldn't work. You would get down from like IBM's Watson before it made its breakthrough. You would get down from millions of possibilities for an answer down to about 300, and then you're stuck. And this was by coding artificial intelligence. And this guy at U of T, the reason we're the center of the universe for artificial intelligence is he's the one who really did the deep learning thing. He said, what if I use calculus? And when I get down to those 300 answers from the millions possible, what if I tweak it with calculus way out near infinity? So to a computer, I just changed all 300 answers to something different. But to the human, the answers are the same because we don't see that tiny, tiny, tiny infinite difference that he just made. And then I run those 300 answers backwards through the neural net brain that we've simulated. And next thing he knows, he's down to 7% accuracy. And now today they're below 3%, less than 3% are inaccurate answers. So guess what a human failure rate is on calculations and making decisions? It's about 4.5%. So now the computers are at around 3% or less in neural nets and neural brains. Guess what's happening? Just massive changes coming over the next 5 years. Same with the autonomous cars. We used to code them. Now we're getting to the point where the cars are going to learn to drive themselves versus us coding and wondering if we forgot to code something. An example of where artificial intelligence still falls a little short is you might remember in San Francisco, or was it LA? Somewhere in California, a Tesla car got into an accident under a tractor trailer and killed the driver. So, of course, that was big news. And when they analyzed the artificial intelligence in the car, it was because the side of the truck had an advertisement panel painted on the side of the truck. And the artificial intelligence engine did not understand the difference between a truck and a billboard sign. So it thought it was a billboard sign, so it kept going. So obviously, even a young human wouldn't make that mistake between a billboard sign and a truck. So there's still a few things being worked on with artificial intelligence, but I'll even tell you 30% of the calls to the TD Bank service center, the customer service center, is handled by automation now. So you're literally carrying on a conversation with a computer. Hey, where are you? What's the weather like over there? And these automated customer service agents actually can carry on a full conversation with you. The only clue you'll ever get is when it says, I'm transferring you to another agent who will be able to better answer your question. Then you know, I just spent the last 20 minutes talking with an automated agent. So if we look down in that lower left corner, to transform or optimize, that's what the technology decision is for most business owners, right? Am I going to use all the new latest technologies to transform what I do and do something completely new with what I know and get new revenue streams from that? Or am I just going to optimize what I have an improved customer experience and maybe add a little revenue to things I'm already doing? Robotic process automation, I thought I'd cover. Not a lot of business owners seem to come across the RPA adage. Robotic just means that it's a software tool. It doesn't mean it's a physical robot, right? So this is all about the ability to get processes into a software system, but with an artificial intelligence engine usually attached so that it can help improve the processes of the business and not simply just codify the way I do things. And all that means is however great or however poorly I did something, now it's codified. Right. So RPA is about improving my processes. So continuous business improvement versus just fixing the way I do things until someday I can afford to pay somebody to recode it again. So at the very bottom, I talk about it a lot. Use Shopify. Also buy Shopify stock if you don't have any. So I bought Shopify stock at the peak in December, and I'm now up 120% despite all that's gone on in the stock market. They were showing in Forbes magazine yesterday that one of the venture capital firms that was in Shopify, they put about, I think it was 55 million in, and they got out at 500 million. And if they hadn't done that, they would have had almost 50 billion today. So they still made their money though. They still did their thing. But Shopify gives us a way to create our own look and feel to our storefronts, but all the transactional coding is already done in the back, right? So Shopify is an excellent platform and doing very well. And I think most of us would know that Shopify is obviously based in Ottawa, Canada, but it's considered to be the second biggest competitor to Amazon. And it specializes in the small independent businesses, and that's why it's been doing incredibly well. When I left, when TD Bank left me last year, the first thing I did was pick up Microsoft Office 365 because a couple of colleagues and I who work together in consulting, we have no disadvantage versus the big companies. We share everything. Office 365 looks after the securities. Obviously Outlook's a good email platform, but the collaboration tools, the ability to work together, for example, even just with my iPhone, I have an iPhone 10, I was out at a client and they needed a spreadsheet from me that had a full analysis for them. I didn't have my laptop or anything with me. I take out my phone. The spreadsheet's on my Office 365 environment. I needed to tweak some numbers and some headings and also take out some numbers from another company. Did all that on my phone really quickly. You wouldn't want to work on your phone a lot, but just to change a few things, and sent him the spreadsheet. So it's really amazing how quickly and efficiently you can work. Sorry, Paul, I'd only thought of Monday here. I forgot about your group. So for project management and workday flow, there's Monday and there's OpenText, which is content management, and another good Canadian company in that sense. So let me finish up with some strategies. I really just wanted to mention things so you guys can talk about them later. So since folks are still muted, I might as well just finish my little summary on the side. So for small businesses, use mainstream subscription services. Don't use the small Mickey Mouse guys around you. It nickels and dimes you to death in the future. So sometimes people look at the subscription costs and they think, oh, well, normally I buy Microsoft Word and I don't upgrade it for like 5 years. And that cost of buying it really is the subscription service for about 2 years. So I'd rather just buy it. And this is true of other software as well. The problem is, you don't get constant updates. You always are having to look after it because it's your own copy, and you don't have it across 5 different devices, or if you switch to another device at someone else's place. So the convenience of the cloud service, I don't think there's any argument can be made as to how efficient that makes us, and therefore saves costs in the long run. The one thing I do want to mention, and on my blog you'll see a decent article about own your own data. It's incredibly important. The mistakes people make is they'll get on cloud services for their business and they'll just think everything's okay, the cloud will look after it. But cloud is such a new business that it's constantly, companies are being acquired, companies are going out of business, different things are happening in cloud. You have to take responsibility for the ownership of your own data. So that's great if you choose to put your data out there in the cloud, but you also have to have your own copy. And whether that's a strategy of having 2 copies in 2 other clouds plus the main one that you use, so in other words, just use a storage cloud to keep a copy of my data versus the cloud that's giving me my actual applications, or whether you have your own small storage system at your office and you keep your data, you really need it, because if a cloud goes bankrupt, they might give you 2 weeks to get your data. A small business, that's okay, you can get it. A large business, there's no way you're transferring your data off in a couple of weeks. So it's been a problem before, and there's solid examples on my blog about companies that have gone through the cloud services going bankrupt. You really have to keep a copy of your own data at the very least. If I was talking to very large corporations right now, I end up going into a long rant about data architecture, so that you don't need the actual applications, but you need to understand your data architecture. For small businesses, I got to know that, but to avoid saying data architecture, just have copies of all your data. A really popular thing right now is called social listening for the marketing folks with us. And the reason I wanted to bring it up is you can't trust just straight out public social media data, because of course there's a lot of data, like media commentary generation engines. So I'm sure you're seeing a lot about that. So we just call that bad data. It's fake data, fake news, right? So you can't trust that. So you have to generate your own social media feedback. Obviously, you guys would know all those things, doing blogs, video channels on YouTube, whichever service you choose to use, using Facebook. So that's why a lot of business consultants and businesses, whether they're a chef at a restaurant, that's why they put themselves out there, whether you're sharing your recipes or your methods of doing things in your business, learnings, trainings. You do that in order to generate a lot of discussion and feedback, and then you use that yourself. So you have your own business data. It's much more high quality than just using generalized data, because people are responding to what you've put out there. And you definitely analyze that and get feedback and help grow and adjust your business based upon the feedback, whether it's just 10 comments that are made or 100 comments that you get. It's very important to get data back, social response back from what you've put out there. So that's a really important way. The other thing that is incredibly important in the industry is payment experience. So I wanted to emphasize, folks are using Amazon, they just click, yeah, I want that. And that's it. They don't have to now go through other clicks for which credit card they want to use, things like that. They just click, yeah, send that here. And Amazon tells them, yeah, you'll have it in 2 days or whatever it is. The payment experience is a huge factor, I find, that small businesses don't pay enough attention to. It is worth the extra % or two to use a proper payment transactor, whether it's as simple as Square, which I'm not a huge favor of, but some people find that very easy to get started with. But whether you're using Square or whether you use Shopify's own experience, whatever it is, you have to make the payment experience extremely easy for people. And then you also use your payment data for loyalty. So whatever you're doing, you need to give customized offers back to your customers. They just expect it today. Everything's about loyalty. That was the first thing I had to do in Grow Joe Fresh, was to create an app for purchasing apparel from Joe Fresh, but then we had to award people for doing so. So I try to encourage small businesses who get overly focused on pennies. They hear they should do that. The problem is we're in a huge transformational time of digital services, and you really can't shortchange that. You just can't. And you have to use the big built out ones that have momentum behind them, such as a Shopify. And be highly secure. So another day I'll have to talk about cybersecurity, but let me just encourage you folks that the cloud services are as secure as anybody. Yes, a friend of mine and I who come from the banks, we have to sometimes create very, very extremely secure apps for the government. So there are things that are a bit more secure than some of the cloud services. But my point is, as soon as they discover problems, they fix them immediately. So it's much better than having your own custom stuff. So when we call it highly secure, I agree it's relative sometimes, but you can rely on the mass use of the system rather than on having something small and custom. So that was just all I could think of quickly, Ivan, to give a little taste today.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very, very much. Anybody have any questions for Ray? I have a quick one though. Ray, the cloud services that you're talking about, like I have obviously a storage system here in the office that I use, but I'm always running out of space, adding more and more and more. I did ask you yesterday, I'm going to ask you again, if I'm going to have cloud as a backup, but have my own storage here in my office, what's the best portable storage that you'd recommend?
Okay, so I'm not up enough on the latest small hardware stuff because where I am, we'd use Hitachi systems or we'd use Dell's EMC environments. So I'd have to look into that, Ivan, and we could talk about it later. The best thing to do, because obviously there's usually folks when they talk about cloud, they'll talk about public cloud versus private cloud. None of us usually are going to make a private cloud. So the banks used to think they'd do their own thing. I think this is just a good learning for people. The banks would think, my data center's so big, if I go to a cloud, it costs me more money because they have to put margin on top of what I can do. So I'll just keep running my own data center. Thank you very much. There's a problem with that. It's called hyperscalers. So nowadays, and I've been to all the facilities with Google and with Microsoft. So they do these massive data centers that even companies like RBC and TD Bank are a small, little, tiny fraction of their compute power in their data centers. So the same is happening with the storage cloud providers. So whether you're using something as simple as Dropbox because you're a smaller business, or whether you're using extended cloud services. So I guess technically you'd call it a hybrid cloud, where I would buy a box that's like a small RAID system for myself at my physical office, but that it also backs up into the cloud service. So whichever service you trust that does both, gives me an on-premises storage of my data and also off-prem. The other thing you need to look into is that it's all encrypted. So when you deal with cybersecurity, you talk about encryption in transit and encryption at rest. So a lot of folks think they don't need to encrypt this stuff when it's at rest. Yes, they do. Somebody breaks into your office and takes your drives. What are they going to do with it if it's encrypted, right? So you just need to look for a few things. You want to buy a service that's encrypted, including at rest on your premises and, of course, in the cloud. But you also want to use a system that it's encrypted while it's being sent on the network, which is pretty automatic these days, but you just need to make absolutely sure. And you want to also be able to disconnect that at any time you want to, so that your physical local equipment can be disconnected from the cloud service. We'll do that sometimes even for development, right? I'll want to copy my data to do some analysis or test things in the environment, and I want to make sure I'm not touching what's stored in the cloud. So you want to be able to make sure it can be disconnected and then reconnected. You want to make sure it's all encrypted no matter where it is and when it's being transported.
Awesome, thank you. Anyone else? And actually, Ray, can we just unshare the screen?
Oh, sure.
Sorry. So I can see who else is on. Because
you can kick me off, right?
I don't. You know what? I'm not sure if I can.
Oh, sure you can.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know why I don't have my little box that says stop sharing.
There we are. I do have that magic power. Well, you know what? I noticed a few folks joined us after we started the presentation. So I'm just going to go and just have them give us their pitch. And then I know that everyone probably heard at least part of the presentation. Love to hear your, if you have any questions. Michael, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike, and I help people sleep at night. I do that by finding out my clients' financial goals, putting together a plan to help them reach those goals, and make sure all the risk elements are taken care of. I also help people with investments, TFSAs, RSPs, RESPs, make sure your financial future's secure, and work with small businesses for group benefits. Mike Palme, Nelson Mello and Associates, the cooperators in Dundas, Ontario. Let's get together and talk about your financial future.
Michael, I got to tell you how much I love your presentation. You know, I've heard it so many times. And it's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frida, go ahead. Oh, hang on. You're on mute. You're muted? Okay.
There we go. Good morning, everyone. That was very informative. Thank you very much. Yeah, I learned an awful lot.
Good.
My brain is about to explode, but anyway, my name is Frida. I'm a global telecom and energy broker. I've been doing that for about 10 years, and I love to help people save money or make money on essential services while feeding children. That's my pitch.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Haven't used it for a while. That's kind of a little rusty right now.
I thought it was great, Frida. Good seeing you again. Donna, if you're there, I'd love to hear your introduction.
I am here. So,
Hey.
good morning, everybody. I was a little late joining on. My name is Donna Smith, and I live in Burlington area. I am joining the group because many reasons, but I am actually moving to Nova Scotia in 27 more days, and we're hoping to look into starting a chapter there. So we're all over the place.
Awesome.
So that's why I'm just checking everything out and how everything is running here to see how we can do it there.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so any questions? I mean, there's a lot of information that was packed. You know, so many things going on digitally that you have to consider. Any questions for Scott?
Ray, sorry. Wait, it says Ray MacDonald.
Sorry, it's Ray. Yeah, it's Ray.
Yeah.
Oh, is it Scott, not Ray?
I'm so sorry.
So my middle name is Scott. Old family and friends call me Scott, so Ivan will mess up once in a while.
That's right.
Okay, so should we call you Ray or should we call you Scott?
If you call me Raymond Scott, I know to run in the other direction because I'm in trouble.
I can totally do it in mom voice too. Everybody see run.
Yeah, my parents didn't want to. It was my dad's name, of course, so they didn't want to call me Junior, so they called me by my middle name growing up. So that's what
I understand.
But it kind of aggravates me.
So when mom said Raymond Scott, I knew to run. That's all I got to tell you.
Well, I'll call you that now whenever you post pictures of food, because he's constantly posting pictures of food, really great food that he.
My wife's a good
makes.
baker. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I know somebody else who also has a alias that he uses on occasion.
Oh my. Really, really, really. That's what you get for sharing.
So, Ray or Scott, or both of you, I actually had a question about data storage. So, for example, I have a particular client that I'm working with, and I don't know how to explain this actually. The licensing, the parent organization is located in the UK. So they now have licensed rights for North America. And so of course they're just working on that launch period. But the question came up, and you know, there's obviously valid reasons for concern, but the question came up around where the data is stored.
Okay. So we're dealing with that right now. I'll give you a quick example and then I'll come directly to your question. So the Ontario government came calling to my cybersecurity friend and said, hey, you know, we need to design something for all the COVID-19 tracing. So we want to be able to track where it is and that. So we're working on a solution now. Most people would have heard that Google and Apple are working on a solution that they'll open source for the US. And of course, here's the problem with that. Their systems store data wherever they want to because it's optimized. So it might not store it in your country. And it is illegal for Canadian companies to have health data or other certain government and what we sometimes call personally identifiable data to be stored in US systems for a reason. The US has something called the Patriot Act. And so any data down there is subject to the Patriot Act, which makes it illegal for Canadians to store certain privacy information in the US. So I must admit, don't know on the UK, except you run into problems with latency. If they are trying to store systems in the UK, it depends what the app is and how much data there is, but the latency will kill you going transatlantic on submarine cable systems to store somewhere off of the continent. It's slow enough when you go over, 100 kilometers or technically a few hundred kilometers, but the systems can get quite slow and cause you performance issues if the storage isn't more localized. So it really depends. If it's not a lot of data, it doesn't matter. Or if it's not time sensitive, right? If it really doesn't matter if it took 10 minutes to get everything properly stored over there that I'm transmitting right now versus 10 seconds, then it wouldn't matter. But that's sort of my two issues to you is I'm not sure the UK because it is part of the Commonwealth, so I'm just not sure how that applies. I could tell you that if there's private data, then, and I mean privacy data under the federal privacy laws, then you can't store it in the US.
Okay, thank you.
I was looking at a video on Elon Musk's, I want to call it the name of that thing that's on Terminator, but anyway, Skynet or whatever it is. But
Skynet has arrived, folks.
Skynet it's being built as we speak. But this time saving is in milliseconds. But it's actually huge. The savings when you're transmitting data for payment transactions or whatever it is.
Yeah, Ivan, I will encourage folks to read that one piece of my blog if you'd like to, which is Satellites Are Changing the World. So I'd encourage you, if you go to raymcdonald.com, as long as you do MAC for McDonald, if you go to raymcdonald.com and go down the pages, you'll see a few interesting blogs. There's stuff about owning your data, and there's stuff about the new technology startups in Canada and who to watch for. But the key one right here is about the satellite technology. It shocks most people because they didn't know it was actually already underway, not just being talked about. But the latency is so low that there won't be any greater latency on your local 5G than there will be to what Elon Musk is putting up in satellites. And so that means I can be out in the Sahara Desert, or I can be in the middle of the in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean, and have the exact same performance I'd have in Hamilton or Toronto or wherever.
That's amazing. It's just too bad that 5G is responsible for COVID-19. I don't know how we're going to be able to handle that.
Yeah. well, what Elon Musk is using, right, is mesh networks. I wanted to mention this quickly because a lot of folks still have bought Wi-Fi extenders in their homes or in their offices, and Wi-Fi extenders were always a horrifically bad device. it might extend the range of your Wi-Fi connectivity, but it kills your performance. It kills the network performance overall. So the new thing to be using is what's called mesh networks. So there's a company called Eero, E-E-R-O, which is a good one to use. Cisco, of course, has a mesh network, and I'm talking homes and very small offices now, because these don't kill your bandwidth. You're allowed the full bandwidth that's piped into your facility can be shared over your Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi extenders use Wi-Fi bandwidth to give you Wi-Fi extension. Mesh networks do not. So I just say it quickly to encourage people, go find a mesh network if you need more than one piece of Wi-Fi in your home or in your small office areas. And the other reason I mention it is that's how Elon Musk satellites work, because the satellites have to fly in low Earth orbit very fast, so they're only in sight for maximum 10 minutes, usually about 6-7 minutes. And so the satellite has to hand you off every 2-3 minutes for safety reasons. They don't wait the whole 7 minutes. So 3-4 minutes, they got to keep handing you off to the next satellite that's coming into view. So it's always line of sight to the satellites. But they're whizzing around so fast, they got to keep handing you off. That's why he wants to put 50,000 up, which is driving all my astronomer friends crazy, because now they're even already starting to get pictures of red streaks of his satellites whizzing by when they're taking pictures of the moon and stuff. And he's only got 300 up there of the 24,000 he's approved for, and the 50-odd thousand he wants to put up.
So it's just interstellar photo bombing, basically.
Yes, exactly. Little fine red streaks in my pictures.
The exposures are going to have to get a lot longer.
Yeah. But it's amazing. He's launching, 60 satellites at a time. You just blast them into orbit in one rocket, blasts out 60 satellites. They're all active within a week of launch. And then he sends up another set. So every 2 weeks, he's launching another 60 satellites.
They say there's a fine line between insanity and genius, and I think he walks that.
He does, doesn't he?
Off.
Oh my goodness!
This morning I saw he was up to something else, so
And it's amazing to older folks like me that rocket comes back and lands on the pad, the launch pad in the ocean. Like, that's just, I know he misses a few, but it's unbelievable how many come back and just land on the pad.
Yeah.
I just pictured,
we thought we were crazy pretending the rocket came back and landed right on the spot.
I could just picture the amount of times that they tried doing this whole trial, and like every time it failed, you can see like his engineers, scientists, and everyone else on staff is just kind of like, why are we doing this? And then the one time that it works, they're just like, that was a fluke. Okay, let's try that again.
It's amazing because it's tens of millions of dollars every rocket, right? And so all the ones that failed just kaboom. But then all of a sudden they start working.
But you think about what happens when this is all done and his Skynet is up and everything's happening and these rockets are landing back on Earth properly. The next set of innovators are going to stand on top of that and build the next generation of technology, right? So what's that going to look like?
Super rapid change. Well, you even have consumer space flights coming at the end of this year, November.
Yeah, well,
they're socially distanced.
Perfect. Like it float around 6 feet apart. But even Tom Cruise is actually, his next Mission Impossible is going to be filmed at the space station, I read. So I mean, it's quite interesting that that's even possible to take a crew up there and shoot.
I just hear like saying socially isolated in the space station, and the only thing my brain's going to is I've seen enough horror movies in space to know exactly how this ends. Like, I've seen Aliens, I know what happens.
Aliens was an excellent roller coaster ride. I love that movie. It's still the only movie that made me feel like I was on a roller coaster.
Absolutely.
We know what comes after Skynet. We know what comes after Skynet is Aliens.
That's right.
That's right.
Anyone else with questions?
I'd like to pick Scott's brain if he wouldn't mind before he leaves. As I mentioned, I'm a small business that does on-site training, and because we're regulated by the Ontario branch of the Ontario government, not a lot of that has changed. What my question is, how can you perceive my business becoming more digital than allowed by my regulations. You know how the restaurants all of a sudden, let's do takeout and curbside and stuff like that. Being a pretty well service industry, hands-on, I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, coming from the banks where I have regulators crawling all over me for 7 years.
Yeah.
So I'm a PCI expert for those who are into credit card transactional stuff. So Loblaw forced me to become the PCI expert. So that's payment card industry for those who don't know. So they publish a bunch of rules and guidelines that your card transaction folks processing folks have to follow. So regulations are an interesting thing because they're all interpretive. Some people overinterpret them. So I go through this at TD Bank all the time for those 7 years I was there. RBC would do something that TD Bank would say, we can't do that because the regulators say no. So I go meet my friends at RBC and they'd say, that's not what that regulation says. And so it's very interesting that most folks overinterpret regulations. So I think the right thing is to find the balance as to where you're meeting the regulation, but you're able to be beneficial to your company. I'll give you a quick example if I can. So I'm on the board of Heritage Green Nursing Home in Stony Creek there, and I'm on one in Toronto as well. So these are not-for-profit long-term care facilities. The one in Toronto says, well, the regulations say I have to give every diet plan 3 meal options. And that home has very high meal expenses because for every particular unique diet plan, they come up with 3 meals every meal. So lunchtime, dinner time, they have 3 options already cooked, made up for that resident. The other home, in fact, it's one I'm not on the board of. So there's another home that I help out consulting-wise, and they interpret it as they just need 3 meal options, that's it. Plus they need some special meals for those who have a particular dietary plan. So their meal costs are way lower. Regulators have gone into both homes and said, yep, you meet regulations, way to go.
Yeah.
So I would say just don't be overly stringent on what you think the regulations say.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
Do you have
that.
a particular regulatory example? Because on the restaurant industry, a lot of my best friends are chefs. I'm good friends with Jamie Kennedy, so I'm really familiar with the restaurant industry, but I haven't worked in it.
Yeah, I'm working with WSIB as my regulatory.
Oh, okay.
And right now, you cannot fully train someone or certify someone in first aid and CPR virtual, right? Because some skills have to be visual. They're not even allowing now. They haven't allowed anybody to do virtual, but it doesn't say that. It just says, now that you said that, it just says I have to observe them physically doing the skills.
Okay, all right. So I'll equate that to a lawyer one. I just redid our wills and power of attorneys, power of cares, and then we needed to get them signed. And there was no way, my lawyer's office is in the TD Center in Toronto, so there is no way I'm going downtown and up in elevators, escalators, and yada, yada. So we had to wait till the Ontario, what do you call the head lawyer for Ontario? Sorry, I forgot the name.
Attorney General?
Thank you. So I had to wait for the Attorney General to issue guidelines on video conferencing and all of that. And they finally did about, what was it, 3 weeks ago? So they finally did, but it's the most convoluted stuff. Why the regulators can't just stay with common sense is beyond me. So here's what I have to do now to sign a will with lawyers who are willing to do it by video. You have to have the package in front of you, and your lawyer and your witness has to be on Zoom, and it has to be recorded. And I have to hold up every page. And then you know how you have to initial every page, and then you have your signing pages. So you got to do it all, and you have to hold up every page and tell them the page number audibly. You have to say, I am now holding up page number 3, and you just got to go through this whole thing. Then you have to courier it same day. Now, this was because the regulator wanted that lawyer to sign it at the same day as a witness as well. So it's done by Zoom, but you got to courier it the same day. But the legal profession requires that they leave your document sealed for 3 days to, hopefully the virus dies in 3 days. So your lawyer does get it same day because the regulator says that, but now your lawyer leaves it in an envelope for 3 days. Right? And then after that, then you got to go through the same thing where I watch them on Zoom and it's all recorded and I hold up every page. And our will's kind of big, so between power of attorney, power of care, and the wills, that's a lot of pages, plus my wife doing it at the same time. So we got all of it doubled. And then they got to courier it back to me, but they don't have to do it same day. But it's kind of wild that regulators do not know what to do with a virtual environment right now.
Yeah.
But they will. It's changing really fast because the demands are massive on them.
That's funny, and yet real estate can use AccuSign documentation, right?
They have no exception on the mortgages still. It's amazing. You have to go in the bank, wear a mask, get gloves, and sign all kinds of crazy pages. It's amazing.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Scott.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I don't have a firm answer, but I'll do some checking.
You got me thinking, too. Thank you.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
Thanks for telling me.
Awesome. Anyone else? Well, while everyone's thinking of a question, I have one for you. You were talking about cloud services that you recommend, and you had Spotify, not Spotify,
Shopify,
and of course Microsoft's.
I should declare I have Shopify stock, so I'm pushing you all to go to Shopify.
Okay, thank you for disclosing. I'm going to, now that you've just probably
it's up 120% since its peak of, well, the then peak of December 13th when I bought it all.
Amazing. But are there any other cloud apps that you would recommend for small business?
So the only thing I was curious, any small businesses, if anyone's using any what we usually call ERP suites, which of course is the large accounting systems. The reason I ask, and I'm just looking up the name while I
QBO.
drag it out. There's a company in Montreal that specializes in taking the older versions of SAP and Oracle and Microsoft and other ERP suites and putting them on the current modern cloud with the current security coverages and selling them pretty cheap, actually. So I was wondering if anybody is using that. Because when I did a .com startup in Toronto, we only had 150 employees, but we decided every single startup is writing its own financials. So we wanted to create value for investors by using an industry rock-solid accounting system. And so I actually had to put in Oracle's ERP suite, just core financials, within 90 days. So that was a fun one. I'm just looking up the Canadian company's name. Sorry. I flew over to talk to them in Montreal back in January, and the name is escaping me for the moment. The CEO's name is Christian Primo. He was in charge of big chunks of Bell Canada for a long time. Oh, Syntax, yeah, SYNTAX. So they're a very interesting Canadian company. They're at about 2,500 employees now. They're funded by what I'd call old Quebec money. As a company name, they've been around since the early 70s in technology. But about 2 years ago, they got a big infusion of venture capital cash, and they went and bought all the little cloud companies they could that did accounting systems. And they have their own IP as to how to run those older versions without having to constantly move to newer versions. But they do a really, really great job. So Syntax is an interesting company to look at if you're looking for software as a service on the accounting side.
So for small businesses, like I think everyone here is part of a small business, or you're independent, like Frida. How can we, best start taking those steps towards fully digitizing the way that we do business? I mean, except for customer-facing companies like Catherine's, where you have to meet people. How what would you implement, this year to help you become more digital?
Yeah, it's always about collection of data, right? So coming from an Oracle background, database guys, you only want to enter data once. And that's usually the problem, is we end up entering data many times in many different ways. We put it in spreadsheets, which is a big bad thing, right? All our data kept in spreadsheets. So if you do have it all in spreadsheets, you got to get someone to do a routine for you to copy that out into either a software as a service or into a straight database, because there's no way to analyze through your data without having it in a proper database.
Well, can you explain that though? I mean, some people don't kind of conceptually understand what you're saying about it's about data. What, my data, I don't look at it as being having much value, except for I'm able to send out emails to people and engage them. But explain how we should be looking at data differently.
So there's different kinds of data. There's transactional data, which is separate from your master data. So what a lot of companies miss, even small companies miss, is you have to have master data, which is just, hey, these are my clients. So we tend to have that. What we miss is just how much did my client use me in the last 10 years or 5 years, whatever it is, and what did they use me for, and how happy are they with me? So we don't even do enough surveys, of which surveys don't really work unless you put time into them. So doing the Survey Monkey and just sending it out to your clients doesn't work. You need to be on the phone with them saying, hey, would you mind filling out? So you use Survey Monkey, but you phone the client, so you arrange a time, you phone the client, you work with them on their survey at that time. And of course, there might be a part of the survey you leave them on their own to see if they give you any honest feedback. But nonetheless, people just don't respond to surveys. It's almost like the old days of flyer distribution versus direct mail campaign versus phone calls. So I think most of us grew up with the old marketing rules. You get 10% response to the phone calls, you get 1% response to direct mail, and you get you get about 3% response to direct mail, you get about 1% response to mass flyer distribution. Those averages kind of hold up, it just, we're changing how we're approaching people. So that's why Facebook and others make so much money on advertising, is because now it's much more targeted, but it's somewhat automated. So you can say, I want to target everybody in the Hamilton and surrounding area, or I want everybody in the country because I can, I just mail order. I deal with everything in Canada. We ship. So we don't track enough customer transactional data.
Any questions on that, anybody?
Even small independents, we don't track enough.
So, Michael, you work with a company. How are they actually gathering that type of information, and any words of wisdom that you would have based on the protocols of the company you're with?
I guess data. That's actually one of the things that they use Oracle as our CRM. It's not really the best program for the insurance industry. I actually used it when I worked at the university too. So the first time I went in there, I went, oh, geez, these menus look really, really kind of familiar as to what I saw at the university. They called it Mosaic at McMaster. It does things, but it's kind of cumbersome. When I was on my own, when I was with Freedom 55, I actually used Word, where I actually made entries. I'd put in a file for each customer, and every time I talked to them, I put in there, this is what I talked about, when I talked, how I talked, to have all that kind of information, all sort of one after the other. I could look in and say on June 18th, I talked about this, on March 10th, I talked about that. It was really easy to find, but when you get into Oracle, the way it's all set up, it's like you have to create cases. So there's a case for different things. Well, when you go in and you want to see customer XYZ, when did you talk with them? And there's 5 cases in there, and you got to go in and look in. And if you don't use cases, then you use notes. So now it's not really it's not the perfect system, really. I think the company started off more as an auto and home and business insured. Now they've gone into the life and wealth thing. And I think as we roll out mutual funds, I think they're going to have to bring in a system that tracks things more, because I know through the Mutual Fund Dealers Association, there's some pretty high level of recording what you've done, who you've talked with, why did you sell, or why did a certain investor end up with a certain thing. So I can foresee them needing to get something more specific to the insurance industry that shows all those things more clearly. And it is a problem because the wealth side and the insurance side are different things too, right? So you have that same client who might have an auto policy, a life policy, and maybe some investments. And these are all different things that have different regulatory requirements. But if you want to just see what you did with each customer, it makes it different. And yes, obviously, yes, security, what Scott was talking about, very, very important. You know, you can't disclose anything ever. If, if Catherine was my client, I could never go say in a meeting like this, well, Catherine, you're my client. Like, and, great that you got, thanks for that auto payment last week. Like, you'd be in huge problems doing like that. I mean, you can say, I have a client that this sequence of events happened with that client. As long as there's no names, there's no ages, it has to be very, very generic and filtered, right? Because privacy is a huge thing. And the other thing Scott was talking about is servers have to be in Canada. You have to verify, especially, the insurance and the mutual funds, the investments, that financial data cannot leave the country. And, I would sometimes see, and I won't say where I saw this, but I would see people backing up their stuff and putting it on a Microsoft server as an example. And, they say, well, it's Microsoft's in Canada. Yeah, but do you know that data that you put on that Microsoft server is staying in Canada? Because if it isn't, and you don't have verification that all your data is in Canada, you've just broke some pretty big rules, and you're liable, right? They can come back and fine you on that kind of stuff. Compliance is really, really important in the financial industry. It's, everything's built on trust, and that you're doing things properly. You can't just go with the cheapest, lowest bidder. That doesn't really work very well in that industry.
Sherry?
Yeah, this particular client, I think, is actually they're not storing any personal data actually in the use of the app. No, I don't think so. So, but certainly the information that's covered in the PAPITA Act obviously is the first source of concern, and then it is, are there regulations around where it's stored? And I know that they've been doing some research, but I figured I had an expert right here. So,
yeah, Scott, thoughts?
No, Mike covered it really well. So I spent some time at Marsh McLennan Group of Companies, so Marsh Inc., the world's largest insurance brokerage group, plus Sun Life Financial. I was there for a while. So insurance is near and dear to my heart. The interesting thing that's talking about transformative change, I just wanted to do briefly, is TD Bank in January last year, the year before, 2018, bought, I don't know if you guys remember, it was a big thing in the news that they bought an artificial intelligence company. So I had to do that integration. So that company was called Layer 6. And I thought I would just make a quick last comment on artificial intelligence and the impact it's going to make. So the reason they called the company Layer 6 is because our brains work in a neural net of 6 layers. So that's where they got the name from. We all thought it meant other things, but it's because our brain process. So every decision you're making keeps getting filtered through 6 layers of neural net until we come to our decision. So now that they've modeled neural nets, Guess how many layers Microsoft's artificial intelligence engine now operates in? So it's 154 or 153. I can't remember. So the problem with artificial intelligence is it still has to be focused. So when we bought this company, it was specifically artificial intelligence needs lots of data. So that's the problem with small businesses versus the large monsters, is you have to feed it a ton of data for it to learn. Otherwise, it can't learn on small sets of data. So the reason that they allowed themselves to be bought by a bank, and the reason we bought them, is we have mortgage information going back into the 1800s. So you cram all this through an artificial intelligence engine, and the amazing thing about it is it starts giving you completely new. So this isn't an algorithm that just picks, the most popular mortgage profiles so far. This is something that learns, and then it makes a human-like decision to say, hey, you know what? If you offered a mortgage that looked like this, you'd get far more customers. And it's a mortgage profile we've never seen before. And so it comes up with that. But you also have to watch artificial intelligence. The best one, I'll give you guys the link to the latest TED Talk on it. It was really funny. She pointed out that they just told the artificial intelligence engine, you have to make a stick figure, so a human movement person, and it's got to cross a 300-meter finish line. And that's all they said to the artificial intelligence engine. So the artificial intelligence engine made a stick figure that was massive long legs, and then it just had the person fall, the stick figure, it just had it fall across the finish line so that the head passed the finish line. That's not what we wanted. We didn't want a stick figure with 300-meter legs so that it would just fall across the finish line. So then they had to go back to the artificial intelligence brain and start giving it limitations. Well, you can't make legs longer than this, and you have to use these parts. And so it started to make a stick figure with knees, and then it had to figure out how to make it walk, and then, how fast can it walk? And so if you don't watch what you tell an artificial intelligence engine it's trying to do, you can get some really bizarre stuff back out of it.
It's kind of like talking to a toddler.
Yeah, exactly. However, as I said, the error rate is down below 3%, whereas a human error rate is 4.5%. And maybe I should just explain that to simply say, what we mean by error rate is when I'm driving and I see that truck and I make it, so I'm not talking about an error rate where I didn't see it. I'm talking about a human error rate where I see it and I know what's going on and I made a bad decision. I didn't avoid it, or I steered the wrong way. I should have gone left, but I went right. Should have made that left turn at Albuquerque, for those who know where my humor's coming from. Just made a wrong decision. That is about a 4.5% rate, where a human sees it all and just makes a poor decision. But an artificial intelligence engine's down to below 3%, but it's focused. It can only be on a particular topic. It's not like a human who can learn a whole pile of things and put creativity together. But still, the intelligence level is getting crazy. Really good.
You said you worked for a TD at one point?
The last 7 years, yeah, since 2012.
So, and you're talking about AI. A couple weeks ago, I went into one of their branches on a Saturday night and went to withdraw money. And I do all the right things, and I'm waiting for the money, and the money's not coming. And it starts doing all kinds of weird things, little sirens, take your money, There's no money coming out at all. And
that's why we don't want to deal with cash. We're doing that deliberately to you. I'm kidding.
But then I ended up phoning their line because I didn't get the money. I went to a different machine in the branch there, and so I did get money. But you talk about artificial intelligence. You hang on the line waiting for a person, and after a while, this great system says, sorry, but due to technical problems, we can't answer your call back sometime. Call back when it's more convenient. And I did that twice. There was 2 hours wasted. I found out that the machine automatically disconnects callers after 1 hour. That's their way of keeping the line short.
Yeah, this small business loan of $40,000. Right, that the government put out. So CIBC, who I bank with, CIBC pings me, hey, you can get the $40,000 loan. So I start to fill out the application, had to go find some information. I come back, the window's timed out, and it won't give me the window again. So I'm pretty ticked off. So now I got to phone the service desk. So I'm calling. They've cut off all their numbers because they want all calls during this crisis to only go through the central service desk. So, okay.
Yes.
I literally wait 2.5 hours. I hang up. I call the next day. I waited about an hour and a half. Person gets the call. I tell them what I need. I said, look, somebody in IT just has to re-trigger my screen so I can get the prompt again and I can fill out my application. Oh, we're going to transfer you to the business line. I'm like, wait a minute. I have been waiting hours on this service desk. They go, oh, no, it's okay. They're not busy. It's only a 5-10 minute wait. But somebody made a decision that they wanted all calls going through the one central service desk, whether it's consumer or business, and then you get triage from there. And doing that, they created such a massive queue, yet the business service desk really didn't have a long queue, but I couldn't call them directly. That was kind of infuriating.
Well, here's an even better one for you, RBC. If you call them right now, they will not answer at any of their branches. Same thing. They want it to go through the call center. I actually had an issue. I needed something. And for that banking institution, because I don't do a lot of stuff, I don't even have a bank card. I don't need it for what I'm doing there. And so their phone system, it says, enter your bank card number. And I'm like, well, no bank card number. We'll call back when you find your bank card. So I can't call you. I have a problem. I need to talk to you. But without a bank card, I can't talk to you. That's just inherently like, what if my bank card's just been stolen or I'm lost, I'm traveling. I do not have my bank card. I do not have access to my number. I can't get a hold of you. Like, so really bad planning.
This is why there's a talent shortage in leadership at the banks. It's a serious problem. I don't know if you've heard about this, but maybe I'm not supposed to say these things, but Scotiabank is trying to force people out so that they can do some headcount changes. So what they've done is they've taken their retirement plan, and if you have enough service points, so you've been at the bank long enough that you could be retired. Most won't, right? They either want to keep working or it's a ego to be at work, not sitting at home. So either reason that they don't retire. So all the folks that have been there a while, they also get benefits in their retirement. So it's not just cash. They get the full health coverages and benefits and all that as if they were employed. So if you have enough service points and you don't retire by August, you lose all the benefit plan when you retire later.
Wow.
So if you guys are getting more phone calls, because the banks truly are, and RBC is going through that in October. So there truly will be a number of jobs opening up at the banks later in the year, because a lot of people won't want to lose those particular benefits.
Michael, there's a digital conditioning. It's interesting to see that we are being digitally conditioned to make sure that we have certain things like your debit card number. There's certain things that you must have. Like, what about people that don't have a cell phone? Well, there are a lot of things that you sign up for that you need a cell phone to authenticate, or whatever. There's certain things that slowly, bit by bit, you have freedom, but not really. You have to conform.
So I have to tell you a story about a family friend of ours, a farmer, who is very local to us and we spend a lot of time with, obviously. And he doesn't have a cell phone, which we kind of tease him a little bit about because he's 80-something. And, 80-something farmers don't know that they're 80-something. So he he had an issue with something on his roof, thought nothing of climbing up on the roof and fixing whatever the problem was. And so we've kind of teased him a little bit, and he says, "Well, I have a cell phone, but it's not connected. And I'm pretty sure it's a 1980s. Was there cell phones in the 80s, 90s?
86,
flip phone.
80s, yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, but we. So yesterday, I'm having a conversation with him, and we're talking about the seed order. And he said, well, he'd gone into the bank because the only way for him to know if they had processed the order for seeds, because of course the places selling seeds right now are like, we can't take any more calls. So he goes into the bank, and the only way to know is that he gets his bank book updated. And he says to me, well, I tried to update my bank book, but they said the machine was down. He said, don't know, but I think they're trying to get rid of those.
Bank book.
I remember doing that once when there was still.
I tell Dusty this story and he goes, yeah, 10 years ago. So, but it's actually possible. He pays everything by check. He does not have a bank card, no, so they didn't, they don't have the machine. The machine was down to run, I'm sure it was something else, but anyways, the machine was down to run the bank books through. And, the last time I remember seeing those statement sheets that they used to use, they actually just print the sheets. I didn't even know that anybody still had books. But anyways.
When I was at the bank, it drove us nuts having to find printers that can still print on the bank books. The old flip book.
Seriously?
Yeah, but keep in mind, this is a small town. This is small town Paris, right? Very agricultural community. He's, I'm sure, not the only one. And so I think that's probably the places that you'll find those printers.
I'm actually impressed that he uses checks because my wife's treasurer of our church there in Hamilton, and we have a number of folks, even in their 70s, don't even use checks. So they're really upset that we're not taking cash right now because they have to go to the bank and get a draft.
Oh, wow. Well, you know what, Scott? One of our business members, he actually creates the ink for checks, right? And of course, business has been on a downturn for the last 15 years. People just don't use checks anymore. But he still has a few clients in the States that he makes the ink, ships it off. But yeah, it's tough. I mean. How do you digitize
I think business
that?
will go away entirely now.
Yeah.
I
don't like all this debit card stuff. I still like cash. I mean, I have a debit card for my main bank. I try not to use it. I don't know. I like cash. I still have checks.
Folks.
I do online banking, but when you talk about the bank books, when I was young, I had everything in my head. Like I knew how much money was in my account. So sometimes every year and a half, 2 years, I'd go update my bank books. I remember going in there one day. That poor lady went through like 3 bank books because every time you went to the machine and took money out, or there's money going in your account, or you paid a bill, all that was on those books, right? And yeah, literally one time I got 3 books that day. She goes, "That one's full. You just put a number on it. There's the sequence."
Guys,
well, COVID-19 is a super accelerator of digital, right? I stopped in Oshawa at a gas station. Guy wanted to pay in cash. She made him put all his bills into a bowl of detergent, like disinfectant.
Good. Catherine, you're saying?
No, I was just going to say, but yeah, we're going to have to get over it because, I mean, unfortunately for the seniors, they will always have that extra at the banks, or should. But Adam's not participating because he doesn't know what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah.
My daughter's first.
Adam uses his phone to pay, I bet.
My daughter
with Bitcoin.
Called out, Jesus.
I
do have cash in my wallet as sort of like a last resort. If I absolutely need to use it, then I will just use cash as much as I can in case anything goes down, right?
Because that was just a memorial for the old days you carried it around.
Yeah. I have a 27-year-old daughter, got her first job in BC. She's a registered nurse. She goes out to Vancouver and her landlord will not accept anything but checks. She called me and I had to walk her through how to write out a check.
I don't think my kids could write out checks either, actually.
No.
But it's interesting that there are still some countries that utilize a lot of cash versus the debit machines as much. So it's kind of interesting because I can imagine that those countries that are still very cash heavy as far as transactions and stuff like that, they're probably going to struggle a lot more than we do. Because I think, I don't know about you guys, but as much as we tease Adam, but the truth is I actually have my cards now on my Apple iPay, app, and I can utilize it. It's not my preference because I'm never sure if I'm doing the right thing, but I think that it's easier because we are halfway there for us to transition. If we have to change one thing and then we can change another. But for people who are not native to all of the technology that comes with stuff like that. It's like a completely new world to them. If I can whip out my phone, this cute little old farmer, and he asks a question, and I can whip out my phone and look something up, and he stands there and stares at me like,
Yeah.
you just look that up right now? He's just stunned by it. So
just remember. Sorry, I was
Go ahead,
to cut you off. I just to say, remember, baby boomers and Generation X were kind of in that mode, but we've got two, like you said, native generations that this is all they know, right? They're digital natives. They're the millennials and the Ys. So
when you
Maybe I'll
go
make
to
a
the
quick comment
States
on
in
the
the
developing
developing world,
eh?
Whoa.
it's really a cash world in the States still, though, because they're so far behind on technology. Like if you go to I'll use my credit card at the gas pumps and stuff. You go to the States, they have this new technology they just got. It's been out for about a year or so now. You put your card in, and it doesn't let your card come out, and then you got to push numbers on a pad. That is new technology. Most gas pumps in the States haven't had pins until the last year or two. And a lot of them still don't.
They were trying to skip the technology altogether, to be honest. They kind of got forced into it.
Yeah, because there's a lot of their big thing with credit card fraud down there is these gas stations along all these interstates where you come off a ramp and there's a bunch of gas stations and you have the scammers going in there. They go on the back side away from where the people inside can see, and they put in the card readers. They pull out of there, and a lot of those people are transient. They're not coming through that station all the time. They don't know that somebody's put a card reader in there. They just sit a mile or so away. They got Wi-Fi, and they're recording all the transactions and producing the bogus cards to use afterwards. So they've had to go to the chip because that's the only thing that will allow it to happen securely. So they're way, way, way behind us on paying in the store with debit cards and things like that, where Canada's actually a really far advanced country for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, maybe a quick comment on the developing world. So India has taken 2 5 million person cities and given everyone a cell phone. So the idea in those two cities, I'm forgetting the names right now, they're in my blog. So those two cities did that because the theory is if everyone has a cell phone, then no one's going to steal from somebody else to get the cell phone. So they gave everyone a cell phone, and that's also tracks their money, their transactions, everything. So there's two cities that have been doing that for 5 years already. So they're considering it a success, and they're wanting to roll it out further. In Africa, everything is mobile, right? Nobody's going to drag fiber optic wires everywhere. No one's going to use computers. So I always tell all my coders who are working for what they want to be a global solution, code mobile only, because you're going to get to all these nations where it's all mobile. And with Elon Musk satellites providing high bandwidth to every square inch of the planet, you're going to be really shocked how fast Africa, India, Southeast Asian countries will be ahead of us.
Yes. Okay, folks, I need to wrap it up. But first, I just want to give a plug because, as you know, Catherine Davies happens to be our city leader for Burlington, and she is running our speed networking on Thursday morning, speed networking. So you definitely want to be on the call for that. Of course, Sherry is, of course, our city leader for Brantford, and Sherry will be having the morning hustle, even though I called it huddle yesterday, but it's okay. The morning hustle on Monday morning.
We'll start alternating.
Yeah, we go from hustle to huddle.
Thursday's the huddle. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
It's out of this world.
So Thursday, Catherine Davies is on. Monday, we have Sherry Lozier. And of course, for those that like the evenings, I think Ray likes the evenings better than mornings, but you did pretty good this morning, Ray.
I believe you woke me up early this morning, Ivan.
Yeah, I'm here for you, man. So, but on Wednesday nights, we do have the evening mastermind jam with Melissa, who's not on the call today, but she is going to be running that at 8:30. So check everything out on the website, thisgreatcity.com, or you can go to our Facebook page. But I want to thank Ray for Ray Scott MacDonald. Don't run. for being here. Thank you for presenting that. You know, so many amazing things happening in technology, and I'd like to have you back on at some point, and maybe we can drill down on some specific things. We'll get some feedback from the call. But if anybody has any final questions, please ask them now, and then we're going to wrap that up. And I want to thank everybody again. Go ahead, Michael.
I was signing up for some of these things, and for some reason, I got on my machine. I can look at my calendar, but I think your evening thing is actually listed as Thursday evening, not Wednesday.
Stop it.
Yeah, and on Thursday morning, there's actually 2 events at the same time on the meetup.
Okay, so that totally makes sense. And now, as you say that, Michael, I remember thinking to myself that I may have had an overlap and I may have put something in the wrong direction, and then somebody brought out ice cream and I moved along. So I'm going to fix that, but thank you for the heads up on that. Thank you.
So the Thursday night isn't happening, it's on Wednesday night, correct?
Yeah, it's Wednesday night. Yeah, Wednesday night is the evening mastermind. That's Wednesday night.
Okay, because I think you put the mastermind on the Thursday on the meetup thing also.
Yeah,
I think
so
it's
I'll
all on Thursday.
Because sometimes you
hey Ivan, for your future discussion, you guys should look at CRISP. Does anybody know CRISP with a K? KRISP? Adam, you familiar with CRISP? Okay, so this is the way they're applying artificial intelligence. So NVIDIA with the RTX graphic cards and CRISP as a straight up software application, they applied an artificial intelligence engine to your audio while you're doing these video conferences.
Oh yeah, RTX audio.
You can be using your hair dryer. Somebody can be vacuuming behind you. You can be clinking your spoon in your coffee cup, and your voice is perfect while you're talking, and they hear none of these sounds. The artificial intelligence engine takes out all the background noises, even a hair dryer. I was so shocked. It's absolutely amazing technology.
Crisp.
Can we run that?
That's RTX voice, right?
That's right, RTX voice. Yeah, it's still kind of experimental, but it works.
Adam, you're on
it does look interesting. Yeah.
Even a dog suddenly barking.
I do want to give that a try.
Happen. Yeah, even a dog suddenly barking, you don't even hear it.
I saw a couple of videos about that, and unfortunately it wouldn't work with my graphics card, but there is something I read where you can change like a line in the EXE when you set it up, and it goes past the hardware restriction. So I might give that a try. That might be fun to play with and have fun with.
Yeah. The NVIDIA works just a smidge better, but CRISP doesn't need any particular hardware. It's absolutely remarkable. I never even imagined anything like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I want to thank everyone. By the way, a copy of this will be, Catherine, I see it. I'll come to you in a second. A copy of this video will be on YouTube. It'll be on, I'll paste it into Facebook, and it will be on our website sometime over the next 24 hours, okay?
Thank you for watching another video by This Great City. If you like this video, please subscribe below. If you are looking for information on upcoming events, please join us for free on our website at www.thisgreatcity.com. If you are a business looking to join our network, please visit our website and follow the links to join. Remember, there is no business like referral business.